A city that sleeps in peace but wakes to sirens, Kansas City's calm hides a heart that never stops bleeding. A front yard torn by bullets and tire marks. A convenience store floor slick with gunfire and fear. An ambulance frozen mid-rescue, drenched in tragedy. And a motel room whispering secrets of family and ruin. Now, decades of prison walls rise where freedom once stood, yet no sentence can resurrect the silence left behind. And this is Every Killer Who Terrorized Kansas City, Missouri, Shocking True Crime Cases. Welcome back to Justice Reversed, where real crimes meet real justice. Number 1, Arel Dawkins. It was a quiet Kansas City morning, the kind where calm disguises catastrophe waiting to unfold. On the 6th of August 2025, 42-year-old teacher and mother of 5, Brazen Kane, was killed outside her home on Morrell Avenue in Kansas City, Missouri. The suspect was her former boyfriend, 36-year-old Arel Dawkins of Blue Springs. Kane, pregnant with Dawkins' child, had ended their relationship weeks earlier. What followed was one of the city's most chilling domestic violence cases of the year. At around 7:51 a.m., neighbors heard the roar of a Ford F-150 truck accelerating across Kane's front yard. Moments later, it struck her with full force. Witnesses watched in shock as Dawkins stepped out while the truck rolled backward. Without hesitation, he raised a .40 caliber pistol and fired multiple rounds. Kane collapsed on the grass, motionless. Dawkins walked toward the street, then turned back twice to continue shooting, even reloading his weapon mid-attack. Investigators later counted 21 shell casings scattered across the yard, evidence of a sustained, deliberate assault. When officers arrived, they found Kane dead at the scene, the truck still idling nearby. The brutality of the attack left detectives stunned. Crime scene units documented bullet impacts across the yard and driveway. Within hours, Kansas City police obtained surveillance footage from a nearby residence that captured the entire sequence, the truck ramming forward, the gunfire, and Dawkins' movements before fleeing. Detectives quickly pieced together a timeline. After the shooting, Dawkins contacted family members and a high school friend, admitting what he had done. His relatives called 911, reporting his confession and urging police to find him before anyone else got hurt. Using cell phone data, investigators tracked his signal to Springfield, Missouri. That evening, the Missouri State Highway Patrol located his truck and took him into custody without resistance. He appeared distraught but unharmed. Officers noted signs of intoxication, and he was also booked on suspicion of driving while impaired. At police headquarters, investigators cataloged the evidence, video recordings, eyewitness identifications, and cell phone records that placed Dawkins at the scene. Forensic technicians confirmed that shell casings recovered matched the .40 caliber pistol found in his possession. The sequence of actions, the vehicle assault, the reloading, and the deliberate aim, formed the basis for a first-degree murder charge. Prosecutors filed formal charges of first-degree murder and armed criminal action later that same day. Dawkins was transferred to the Greene County Jail, where he remains held without bond. His case is still pending, and no trial date has been announced. The community's grief was immediate. Colleagues at the Academy for Integrated Arts, where Kane taught for 9 years, described her as a passionate educator who inspired hundreds of students. A GoFundMe launched to support her 5 sons raised over $12,000 within days. City officials called the tragedy part of a worsening crisis. By August 2025, domestic violence killings had already surpassed the previous year's total. Kansas City continues to mourn a teacher whose light was stolen in daylight, a reminder that love turned violent leaves only silence behind. Before moving on, if this truth hits you, press hype stand with the forgotten, amplify justice, and make sure silence never buries the voices of the lost. Number 2, Adrian Stallings. It started with laughter inside a Kansas City convenience store, then seconds later, it turned into a storm of bullets and chaos. On the 18th of November 2025, 41-year-old clerk Craig Washington was working his evening shift at the Phillips 66 Express Mart on Prospect Avenue. Known for his calm demeanor and steady hand in resolving disputes, Washington was caught in the crossfire of a senseless act of rage. The man accused of pulling the trigger was 27-year-old Adrian Stallings, who prosecutors say turned a simple misunderstanding into a brutal execution. Around 8:30 p.m., Stallings entered the store with a woman to buy a bottle of Bacardi Gold. While waiting at the counter, he believed several customers playing video games nearby were mocking him for not having enough cash. Surveillance video captured Stallings confronting them, asking what they were laughing at before threatening violence. Washington, the store clerk, stepped forward, placing himself between Stallings and the others, trying to defuse the tension. For a brief moment, it seemed the situation might calm down. Stallings pulled a 9mm handgun from his clothing and fired. The first shot hit Washington, sending him collapsing to the floor. In the chaos, Washington tried to reach for his own firearm but dropped it. Witnesses said Stallings picked it up, stood over him, and continued shooting. By the time the gunfire stopped, Washington had been struck 17 times in the face, arms, chest, and back. Shell casings littered the floor, and customers ran for cover as Stallings fled to a dark Chevrolet sedan waiting outside. Police arrived within minutes to find Washington dead behind the counter. Forensic teams recovered 17 9mm shell casings and Washington's dropped firearm. Detectives immediately began combing through security footage from the store's multiple cameras. The suspect's identity was confirmed within hours. Stallings' distinct face tattoos matched previous booking photos from Jackson County records. A witness, familiar with both men as frequent customers, identified Stallings in a lineup, giving investigators enough evidence to issue an arrest warrant. Over the following days, the Kansas City Police Department's Fugitive Apprehension Unit tracked Stallings' movements using cell data and witness leads. On the 4th of December 2025, he was arrested without incident and booked into the Jackson County Jail. Prosecutors charged him with second-degree murder, armed criminal action, and unlawful possession of a firearm, citing his prior felony record. Court documents reveal Stallings made his first appearance on December 10, with another hearing set for December 30. He remains held without bond while awaiting trial. Prosecutors have described the killing as senseless and deliberate, pointing to the surveillance footage as overwhelming evidence of intent. The victim's family expressed grief and disbelief. His mother, Kimberly Johnson, said her son worked hard to support his family and often spoke of how dangerous that block had become. Community members gathered outside the store in the days after the shooting, leaving candles and flowers. A moment of anger, a burst of violence, and a city left searching for answers that justice alone can't restore. Number 3. Shanetta Bossell. It began as a routine call for help, the kind Kansas City paramedics answer every night, but this one would end in blood and disbelief. On the 27th of April 2025, firefighter-paramedic Graham Hoffman, 29, was providing medical assistance to a woman inside an ambulance when the unthinkable happened. The patient, 39-year-old Shanetta Bossell, had been released from jail just 2 days earlier after assaulting a police officer. That night, she would fatally stab Hoffman in the heart during a routine transport that turned into one of Kansas City's most horrifying emergency response tragedies. The events that led to the murder began 4 days earlier. On April 23, police in Platte City arrested Bossell after she was caught attempting to break into parked vehicles. During that arrest, she bit an officer on the arm and tried to grab a knife from his tactical vest. Despite the violent outburst, she was granted bond at $10,000 on April 25 and released after posting it. 2 nights later, around 12:40 a.m., Kansas City police responded to reports of a woman walking along Missouri 152 highway, appearing disoriented and injured. Officers found Bossell with a bleeding finger and offered her a ride to safety, but she declined, agreeing instead to be transported by ambulance. Paramedic Graham Hoffman and his partner from the Kansas City Fire Department were assigned to the call. For safety reasons, a police cruiser followed closely behind the ambulance as it made its way toward the hospital. At approximately 1:25 a.m., while the ambulance was still moving, chaos erupted inside. The driver heard Hoffman call out for help, reporting that the patient had a knife. Within moments, Bossell plunged a folding blade roughly 4 inches long into Hoffman's chest, piercing his heart. The driver swerved to a stop as Hoffman collapsed inside the cabin. Bossell then scrambled toward the front of the vehicle, attempting to shift the ambulance into drive. The officer following behind rushed to intervene. As he pulled the rear door open, Bossell fought back violently, biting the officer's arm before he struck her to break free. She was restrained on the ground as backup units arrived. Paramedics from a separate crew began life-saving efforts on Hoffman, but despite desperate attempts, he was pronounced dead shortly after at a nearby hospital. Investigators recovered the weapon from the ambulance floor and confirmed the attack had occurred mid-transport. Surveillance footage from traffic cameras and internal ambulance video captured the moments leading up to the stabbing. Detectives quickly linked Bossell to her prior arrest and determined that her recent release allowed her to re-enter the community unsupervised despite earlier violent behavior. Bossell was charged with first-degree murder, 2 counts of armed criminal action, and assault on a law enforcement officer. She remains held without bond in Jackson County. The Kansas City Fire Department and city officials called Hoffman's death an unimaginable loss. And a job built on saving lives, one responder's final call revealed just how unpredictable danger can be. Number 4. Keivon Greene. Beneath the yellow glow of Kansas City's streetlights, a late-night party was winding down when a single argument lit the fuse for chaos. In the early morning hours of the 25th of June 2023, the calm of 57th Street and Prospect Avenue shattered as gunfire erupted outside an auto shop that had quietly become a popular after-hours gathering spot. Within minutes, the pavement was covered with shell casings, 3 people were dead, and 6 others were wounded. Police later identified 26-year-old Keivon Greene as the man who started the shooting. At the time, he was out on bond for separate felony charges, released from jail just 2 days before the massacre after posting a $1,000 cash bond. Witnesses told detectives the violence began with something that should have ended in seconds, a misunderstanding over a simple hug. Camden Brown arrived at the party with his girlfriend, who greeted another man and his partner briefly. Brown told the man to watch his hands before turning away. In that instant, a gun was drawn, and a single shot struck Brown in the back. The moment his body hit the ground, multiple shooters opened fire, sending the crowd scrambling for cover as dozens of rounds tore through the night. When officers from the Kansas City Police Department arrived, they found a scene of devastation. 29-year-old Camden Brown was dead near a parked car. 22-year-old Nico Manning, who had celebrated his birthday the night before, and 28-year-old Jassity Strong, whose own birthday was that day, were also pronounced dead at the scene. 6 others were transported to area hospitals with non-life-threatening injuries. Detectives immediately began piecing together the timeline. Crime scene technicians collected shell casings, ballistic fragments, and surveillance footage from nearby businesses. In less than 12 hours, the case began to unfold. Investigators learned that Greene had checked himself into a local hospital for a gunshot wound to his hand. Initially believed to be another victim, he quickly became a suspect when a witness identified him as one of the shooters. Video evidence and physical descriptions matched. Later that day, a second suspect connected to the gunfire was arrested in Grandview, Missouri. Prosecutors moved quickly. Greene was charged with 3 counts of second-degree murder, 6 counts of armed criminal action, and first-degree assault. For the death of Jassity Strong, prosecutors applied Missouri's felony murder statute, arguing that even if Greene did not fire the fatal shot, he was legally responsible for initiating the deadly chain of events. Investigators emphasized that Greene's prior release on a low bond had allowed him to return to the streets before the mass shooting occurred. Court records show Greene was ordered held without bond at the Jackson County Jail. Police Chief Stacey Graves and Mayor Quentin Lucas condemned the violence, calling it senseless and preventable. By dawn, the music was gone, the crowd dispersed, and silence returned to Prospect Avenue, leaving behind only grief, questions, and a city still counting its losses. Number 5. Jovon Burrell. Under the quiet hum of a Kansas City morning, a mother pushed her baby's stroller, unaware that death was already waiting nearby. On the 20th of July 2020, 20-year-old Diamond Eichelberger, 4 months pregnant and walking her 1-year-old daughter Belle to the hospital, was shot and killed in broad daylight near East 26th Street and Van Brunt Boulevard. Witnesses described a gray vehicle pulling alongside her outside a 7-Eleven. When someone inside called her name, she looked up and a burst of gunfire followed. She collapsed instantly, while her daughter, still strapped in the stroller, miraculously survived unharmed. The shooting, swift and deliberate, left Kansas City shaken. Within days, police identified 19-year-old Jovon Burrell as a suspect in the ambush. Detectives began piecing together the fragments of the attack, tracing the gray vehicle through nearby surveillance cameras and witness accounts. Then came the most crucial lead, a video Burrell himself had uploaded to Facebook. In it, the camera panned across the crime scene from inside the suspect vehicle, revealing a handgun on a passenger's lap. The caption read a chilling phrase, mocking the victim's death and punctuated with laughing emojis. Investigators quickly linked the account to Burrell's name, confirming he had been in the driver's seat at the time of the killing. When questioned, Burrell admitted to driving the car but insisted he was not the shooter. He claimed an unknown man in the back seat had pulled the trigger and that he had been under the influence of unprescribed Xanax. He also acknowledged that his younger brother had been in the front passenger seat. Detectives pressed further, uncovering digital evidence and phone data connecting the group to the victim's location shortly before the murder. It was through those records that a second suspect, 21-year-old David Everson, emerged as the alleged gunman. In November 2021, prosecutors charged Everson after finding messages he sent shortly after the shooting. In one text, he bragged about firing 5 times dead in her face, claiming Eichelberger had set up his cousin. The motive appeared rooted in street-level retaliation, though investigators never confirmed any link between Eichelberger and the alleged cousin. The Kansas City Police Department and the Jackson County Prosecutor's Office built a case through surveillance evidence, ballistic analysis, and Burrell's own social media footprint, a rare instance where digital arrogance replaced any effort to hide. On the 26th of November 2024, Jovon Burrell was sentenced to 40 years in prison for second-degree murder and armed criminal action. His co-defendant, David Everson, remained in custody awaiting trial under a $250,000 cash-only bond. Both men faced the weight of Missouri's firearm enhancement laws, designed to address the city's ongoing surge in violent crime. For Kansas City, the killing of Diamond Eichelberger was another mark in a summer already scarred by violence. A mother's walk to care for her sick baby became a symbol of how senseless brutality can strike without warning and how, sometimes, the killer's own hands deliver his conviction. Number 6. Mantonia Duncan. In a quiet Kansas City neighborhood, a night that began with silence ended with gunfire and a family forever changed. On the 17th of July 2023, police responded to a home in the Northtown Fork Creek area after reports of a shooting. Inside, they found 39-year-old Jovon Duncan dead in her kitchen, multiple gunshot wounds marking what investigators described as a brutal act of domestic violence. The suspect was her husband, 36-year-old Mantonia M. Duncan, a convicted felon barred from owning firearms. Prosecutors later charged him with second-degree murder, armed criminal action, and unlawful possession of a firearm. The hours leading to the killing were chaotic and erratic. According to witnesses, Duncan had grown increasingly unstable and paranoid. He told his brother by text that he did not feel right and that things were weird. In a later FaceTime call, he appeared frantic, rambling about betrayal and being tired of getting messed over by everyone. That same night, he drove to the home he shared with Jovon, still fuming from earlier arguments over her daughter moving in. He reportedly felt the daughter was trying to run the house, fueling tension that had been building for weeks. Shortly before 11 o'clock, Jovon's son heard the door slam and Duncan's footsteps entering the kitchen. Moments later, Duncan ordered Jovon to line up, then fired his handgun. The son watched his mother collapse, fled to his room, and hid in the closet, terrified he would be next. When officers arrived, they recovered 9 shell casings scattered across the kitchen floor and a Springfield Hellcat 9mm handgun lying next to Jovon's body. The autopsy later revealed multiple gunshot wounds to her head and torso. The investigation moved quickly. Duncan's brother, worried after receiving his disturbing messages, had sent the mother of his daughter to the house to check on the couple. She found Jovon's body and immediately called 911. While detectives processed the scene, Duncan appeared at his brother's house acting strangely and frightening his niece. Officers from the Kansas City Police Department arrived soon after and took him into custody without resistance. Detectives noted blood on his legs, clothing, and right hand. Duncan was taken to a hospital for a brief medical evaluation before being transported to police headquarters for booking. Following his arrest, prosecutors outlined the charges. Missouri law mandates a minimum 10-year sentence for second-degree murder, though the final penalty could extend far longer if convicted on all counts. As of the latest court filings, Duncan had not secured legal representation, his bond was set at $100,000 cash, and he remained held at the Jackson County Detention Center pending further hearings. Kansas City authorities reiterated their concerns about rising domestic homicides, with prosecutors linking the case to ongoing discussions about firearm access among previously convicted offenders. As dawn rose over East 54th Street, the kitchen where Jovon once cooked and laughed with her children stood still and cold, a haunting reminder of how silence can follow the loudest moments of rage. Number 7. Jason Sessoms. Under the fluorescent glow of a Kansas City motel, a family road trip ended in tragedy and silence. In late March 2025, 19-year-old Jason Christopher Sessoms was accused of killing his parents, 42-year-old Marvin Sessoms and 38-year-old Malika Sessoms, inside a room at an extended stay motel on North Corrington Avenue. The family had been on their way to Georgia to visit relatives but returned to Kansas City when Jason's 10-year-old brother forgot his school laptop. What seemed like a simple detour turned into a crime that shocked 2 states and left investigators searching for answers buried beneath paranoia, fear, and resentment. According to court documents, Jason's mental state had been unraveling for days. Friends said he appeared increasingly agitated, talking about pressure from his family and convinced someone in Kansas City had put a hit out on him. On the night of March 27, the tension reportedly reached a breaking point. Prosecutors alleged that while his parents and younger brother slept, Jason retrieved a .22 caliber handgun, pressed a pillow over his mother's head, and fired twice. His father awoke and reached for his own weapon, but Jason shot him multiple times, later telling detectives the first bullet ricocheted off a metal plate in his father's skull. He said he kept shooting until the room went silent. Surveillance video showed Jason and his little brother loading a black Mitsubishi and driving away before dawn. When relatives in Georgia couldn't reach Marvin or Malika, a missing persons report was filed. By March 29 at 3:45 a.m., Kansas City police entered the motel room. Inside, officers found both parents dead in bed, the blanket soaked with blood and 5 spent shell casings scattered near a torn pillow. Before detectives even discovered the bodies, Jason had been taken into custody across state lines. At 12:45 a.m. that same morning, police in Covert Township, Michigan, responded to an armed home invasion. When they arrived, they found Jason attempting to steal a car and struggling with officers, even trying to grab one of their firearms. After his arrest, they learned he was traveling with his 10-year-old brother, who was unharmed but frightened. The boy told investigators his brother had shot their parents in Kansas City before driving north. The case quickly expanded into 2 jurisdictions. In Missouri, prosecutors charged Jason Sessoms with 2 counts of first-degree murder and 2 counts of armed criminal action. In Michigan, he faced additional charges including home invasion, resisting arrest, and attempting to disarm a police officer. A grand jury in Clay County indicted him on the 22nd of July, 2025, and he pleaded not guilty. Following his extradition to Kansas City in June, he was ordered held on a $2 million bond pending trial. Authorities have not released a motive beyond the family tension and Jason's reported paranoia. Court records confirm no sentence has yet been issued, with future hearings scheduled into late 2025. What began as a drive to visit loved ones ended with sirens, suspicion, and the echo of 5 gunshots. Number 8. Derek Jones. A door opened, 6 children stood nearby, and in seconds, one man's anger turned a family home into a crime scene. On the 12th of March 2023, 24-year-old Derek C. Jones arrived at a residence on Highland Avenue in South Kansas City, Missouri. Inside was 30-year-old Darrell Brown, his children, and several others. What began as an ordinary Sunday evening would end in a fatal domestic shooting that left Brown dead, 6 young witnesses traumatized, and Jones facing decades in prison. Around 8:15 p.m., Jones approached the house and knocked. When Brown answered, Jones stepped 1 foot inside the doorway and opened fire without warning. Witnesses later told police that Jones fired several rounds, stepped back, then returned twice more to shoot again. After ensuring Brown was motionless, he allegedly took the victim's own firearm, an AR-style pistol, and fled the scene. Responding officers found Brown unresponsive inside the front door. He was pronounced dead at the scene, multiple gunshot wounds marking the point of entry where the confrontation began. Detectives quickly began canvassing the area for witnesses and surveillance footage. Through vehicle records, they located a GMC Terrain matching the description provided by witnesses, registered to an address on South Benton Avenue. Less than 30 minutes later, around 8:45 p.m., Kansas City police observed Jones exit the same vehicle. He was taken into custody without incident. Forensic analysis confirmed that Brown had been shot multiple times at close range. The shell casings recovered near the front door matched the weapon Jones admitted to carrying. The firearm taken from the victim's home was later located in a separate search, linking the theft directly to him. Prosecutors also noted the extreme danger posed to the children, emphasizing that Jones's decision to fire repeatedly inside an occupied home showed deliberate disregard for human life. During interrogation, Jones first denied involvement, insisting he had been elsewhere. When investigators confronted him with forensic evidence and eyewitness accounts, he changed his story, claiming self-defense. He alleged Brown had pointed a firearm at his face, forcing him to react. Detectives found no supporting evidence of that claim. Instead, Court documents revealed that Jones was under a standing order of protection, prohibiting him from approaching the residence or its occupants within 1,000 feet. He knew the order was active at the time of the shooting, establishing one of the key aggravating factors in the case. Jones was charged with second-degree murder, armed criminal action, violating an order of protection, and first-degree endangering the welfare of a child. He remained in the Jackson County Detention Center on a $250,000 cash-only bond. In 2024, Jones accepted a plea deal and admitted guilt on all counts. On the 10th of March, 2025, a judge sentenced him to 22 years in prison, the maximum term allowed under the agreement. In a single moment, a doorway became the divide between law and tragedy, a space no one can ever reopen. 8 names, 8 lives, and one city scarred by violence that refuses to sleep. Each crime left its own echo, from the flicker of streetlights on Prospect Avenue to the quiet corridors of justice where verdicts can't bring back the lost. And if these stories gripped you, don't let them vanish into the noise. Subscribe to Justice Reversed, ring the bell, and stay ahead of every new case we uncover. Because in this city, the next headline is already being written and truth never hides for long.